Welcome back. This is lesson 2 of learning about Python programming. In this lesson we're going to concentrate on looking at what variables are and how to get user input. We're also going to look at one of the most common types of errors that you're going to come across when writing code and how to deal with it. Okay, let's start by opening PyCharm. Once you've opened PyCharm, you'll see that the programs that we created in the last lesson are still there, or they should be if you're still set up to point to the end drive. And the first program was my Hello World program, and it was very simple instructions. Let's have a quick look at those instructions a little bit more detail. Okay, this is the instruction that we used, and it's the print hello world. Now let's look at what this is doing. Now we have, first of all, a Python keyword, print. Now, like any language, Python has a series of reserved keywords which are instructions that Python understands. Now this particular instruction means output, and that means display something on the screen. Now in this case, the brackets tell us what we want to display. So anything inside the brackets is going to be displayed on the screen. So we're going to display this sentence, which is hello world. And when we press run, or we run the program, what should happen is hello world is displayed on the screen. So let's see it in action, just to remind ourselves. To run a program, we click on Run, and we make sure that we're selecting the correct program. If it's not here, then click on the Run button and check that you're selecting the correct program. When that happens, if it works, it'll display what you want to display down here, which in this case is Hello World. This is what we call the console window. Well, that's a good point. What does happen if you forget to use the speech marks around Hello World, or you forget one of the brackets? Well, let's have a look and see. So I'm going to remove this bracket. Now already you can see there's a little red squiggly line which should give you a clue that something's not quite right. But I'm going to ignore this red squiggly line and see what happens. So I'm going to run my program. And yes, okay, that's what happens. Error message. In fact, this type of error is a particular type of error that you're going to come across a lot, and you need to remember the name of it. It's called a syntax error. But what is a syntax error? Well, the correct definition is in front of you. What that basically means is that, like any language, a programming language like Python has particular rules. Now in the English language, we say that a sentence has to end with a full stop, or has to start with a capital letter. Those are the rules of the language, and Python has its own rules. And if we don't follow those rules, then Python doesn't understand what we're trying to tell it. Therefore, when we remove that bracket, Python doesn't understand what you're trying to tell it. It's saying, shouldn't there be a bracket there? But human beings, well, they can look at a sentence, and if there's a full stop missing or a speech mark missing, we can use our intelligence and we can say, well, I kind of know what it's trying to say, so I can interpret that. But a programming language can't. Well, a computer can't, because computers, they just do what we tell them. So a computer will just say, doesn't compute, don't understand it. So a syntax error is basically the most common type of error you're going to get, and it's going to be really, really frustrating. And to be honest, the more you are distracted, the more you're not concentrating, the more you're going to make this kind of error. Because it's very easy to be turning around to your friend, having a chat, and just forget to put a bracket in there. You run your program, you get an error message, and you're, why is it not working? So you have a look, you see, bracket missing, syntax error, put the bracket in place, and you'll find that your program will work. So part of programming is not just about writing the code, it's also checking for errors and being very careful in what you write. So back to our main topic for this video, which is variables and data types. And we're going to start by looking at variables. Now, what is a variable? In programming terms, a variable is a named area of storage that holds a value that may change during or between programs. What this means is this. Think of a variable as an area to put things in, and we give that a name. Now, in this example, I'm representing a variable by using the image of a box, and we're going to put something into that box, some kind of value, and that box is labeled subject. Now, I'm going to put the subject box is going to contain the term computer science. And it's going to be stored inside that box, so we can take it out and use it again later. Now, how this works in Python is we start by typing the name of the variable. And in this case, like the way we've labeled our box, we've got the name subject. So by typing subject equals, I've created an area called subject to store something in. Now, when I put after equals a value, like this, I'm putting the sentence computer science in, that will then be stored inside that variable. And then I can do whatever I want with that variable, such as print it or use it somewhere else. So to see how to use variables, we're going to start off by creating a new Python file. So double check again that you've got the N drive and file, new, and again don't click on file, click on Python file, and I'm going to call this my first variables. Right, so we've got a new tab here. So my first program, we could close that because we're not going to use it today. So I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to call my variable subject, and I'm going to put equals. Now, as soon as I put equals there, I am saying this is a variable named, and I'm going to store something inside it. I'm going to store the word, well, the subject, computer science. And I've used speech marks because I'm putting a sentence as in there, or a word inside that variable. And I'm going to use the print command. Now, instead of putting some sentence in there, I'm going to put the variable name in there. And I'm just going to type subject, which is the name of our variable, and I'm going to run it and see what happens. So if I press run, well, the first thing that happens is, because it's a new program, if I press run there, it's going to run the old program. So I need to click on the third run, and I need to make sure I'm clicking on the right program here. And then if I look down here, it's printed the words computer science, which is what is stored inside this variable here. Now, if I change what's stored inside that variable, so I change what's inside the speech marks, I put something like maths, and I run it again, if I look down, it's printed something different, even though I haven't changed what I need to print. I'll change it again. I'm going to put Spanish in there, and run it again, and this time it's Spanish, because it's printing whatever's stored inside that variable subject, which I keep changing. What happens if I put speech marks around subject? What will it print? Well, it prints the word subject, but why? Well, putting speech marks around subject means I literally want to print whatever's inside those speech marks, which is what we did with the Hello World program. We have a look at that. So we put it inside speech marks, and when we took out, if we take out those speech marks, we get a syntax error, and we get a syntax error that says, I don't understand hello, I don't understand world. And that's because it thinks those are variable names, and they're not. So it's looking for a variable called hello, and it's looking for a variable world. But if we put the speech marks back in, it's like, oh yes, you want to print, oops, sorry. you want to print that sentence. So then it will work fine. So when I put speech marks around subject, it printed the word subject. But if I take them out, it prints whatever's stored inside the subject. Now what I can also do, I can combine the two, and I can say put a sentence like that. So I can put speech marks around a sentence, a comma, and then the name of a variable. And I'm going to change that because, no offense to Spanish, but this is my favourite subject. So I'm going to change it from subject to computer science. So I'm going to change subject to computer science, and it should print out my favourite subject is computer science. And there we go. So far, all of our programs have variables storing values that are programmed into them. That's within the code. But what if we want our user to enter via the keyboard values that we need to store? This means getting the values from the user. We call this user input. As you can see in this program, the subject is programmed into the variable subject. So the only way to change what the subject is by typing it in here and storing it. That's hard coding a value into a variable. Now, what if we want to ask the user what their favourite subject is and then give them a message which uses that value or do something with that value? So we need to get the user input. We can do this by, first of all, writing an instruction that prints out a message. So for example, what is your favourite subject? And then creating a variable, subject equals, remember this is assigning a value, we're going to assign a value to that variable. Now we're going to use a new key term or a new Python instruction called input. Now input is basically saying get a value from the keyboard, get the user to enter something. So input, need the brackets, otherwise you will get a syntax error. Now when we run the program here, what's happening is whatever's input is going to be put into subject. So we've created a variable called subject, and now we're waiting for the user response. When the user keys in a value, presses enter, that value will then be stored inside the variable subject. So instead of coding it within your program, it's going to be entered by the person using your program. Okay, so let's change our original program here, and we're going to start off by printing out the message, what is your favourite subject? And then we're going to change this, instead of hard coding computer science in there, I'm going to put input like this. And then I'm just going to change the last command to your favourite subject is, and whatever's stored in subject. So if we run this now, it asks what's your favourite subject, and then it stops because it's waiting for the user to enter something. So I'm going to type in computer science and press enter. It will put that value inside the variable subject, and it's printed out the third line, which is your favourite subject is whatever's stored in subject. Now I typed in computer science, which was what was there before. So this time I'm going to try something different. So you'll see that every time I run it, depending on what the user enters, I'll put German in there. Your favourite subject is German. So whatever type they type in, I'll try again. It's going to repeat whatever's been typed in. So input basically takes the value from the user and stores it in the variable. And then we can use the variable however we want. Now another little trick we can do, at the moment we've got two commands here. We've got the print to display the prompt, so the question, and we've got the line here which takes whatever's entered and puts it into the variable. Now with Python what we can do, if we do this, laptop's playing up. Now if we do this and get rid of that line, it's exactly the same thing. We can put inside those brackets a question. So whatever's inside those brackets for the input command will be displayed on the screen. So it's inputting what is your favourite subject is the question, and it's still going to work the same way. Whatever's typed in is going to be stored in subject. So I'm going to run it again. What's your favourite subject? I'm going to put geography. And again, see, it still works exactly the same. So this is quite nice because this makes your code a lot more efficient because you're using less commands. The less commands you use, the quicker your code will run and the more efficient your programming style is. So to recap, in this lesson we have looked at syntax errors and how to fix them, what variables are, creating variables in Python and assigning values to them, using the input command to get user input and assign it to a variable. In the next lesson, we're going to look in more detail about data types and mathematical operators.